AA, Agnostic Agile, was created in 2017 to balance the trends that we were seeing in the Agile industry at the time and pretty much still today, where everyone's peddling an expensive framework that you need to adopt. There's a plethora and an ever-increasing number of certifications that you need to have, and this kind of sense that a one-size-fits-all approach, which we at AA believe goes against the original spirit and intentions of the Agile Manifesto. We have 13 principles. Our principles serve as a reminder of what it means to be in service of agility and to put our clients' interests first and to put their context first as well, ahead of any framework or other preferences that we Agilists may have. And of course, the group primarily created to come together as a community to share, learn, and grow together. So that is a very short speech about what Agnostic Agile is all about. So in terms of the content that we have for you today, we have Riina here, and I'm really, really happy to host her. She's actually one of the few speakers that I went to another meetup to listen into because I was quite interested. And I thought her content was so great that I had to reach out to her and invite her on to give a talk at Agnostic Agile as well. So I'm really glad to have her here. She's going to be speaking about Agile HR. She wrote a book on Agile HR as well. And from what I can understand, she's very much pioneering the industry or the HR industry to embrace this thing we're calling Agile, understand what benefits it can bring to not only the HR function, but to understand how an Agile HR can be included in the transformation of organizations to bring about more joined up benefits. I've always thought this is incredibly important because in Agile, we tend to focus significantly on tech and IT, but at the same time, we talk about systemic changes and looking at the bigger picture to understand how we can improve our organizations. And I think inherently, you have to go beyond tech and beyond IT. You have to include all of the different functions in an organization, particularly in efforts like transformations, if you really want to bring about systemic positive changes. So I'm always super interested to hear about and learn about how we can include other functions in our Agile transformations and how we can essentially work as one big happy team to bring about better business results. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that today from Riina. And I have no doubt that we'll all be leaving feeling very inspired. But I won't go too much more into the detail about what you can expect or about Riina, because I'm sure she'll do a much better job at introducing herself than I will. So Riina, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here, everyone. I am honored to be here to share my part of the story around agility in the non-software and non-IT space. So my name is Riina Hellström. I am a Finnish lady, been working within strategies, org changes, leadership development, HR for more than 20 years. How I came across Agile was actually one of my friends were working with agility. And even before I've learned about it, I always were Agile by heart. So when I started learning about agility, it was like finding home. It was like somebody had created a language, a structure, a systemic approach to getting things done together with smart, dedicated people that I really believed in. So I practically jumped off a corporation career, started my own company without a single client. My husband said I'm totally crazy, and I said that's why you married me. Started my own company, started working to learn as much as I could about agility and bring that into my domain, which is leadership development, HR, the non-tech space of the organizational changes and transformations. So that's what I've been doing during the last, it becomes 13 years soon, 14 years. I was the first one to write an Agile HR book. So I've been writing about that and bringing that into my peers. And I was also the third one to tweet with the hashtag Agile HR in the world. But there were two Swedes that were before me, and that will always haunt me. So Sweden won there, unfortunately. Yeah. So today I thought I would kind of onboard you to what I think is exciting with this and how I think it's really important if you work with agile transformations, whether it is on the tech side, on the product side, on the R&D side, on the hardware side, wherever you work with these, how important it is to start befriending HR people and start onboarding them to what it means, because otherwise they're going to be blocking you really badly. So I hope it will become clear today why what we work with in HR, what I mean with Agile HR, and then how we could work together. That's the goal of this. I have a couple of slides for people who are visual learners. So, but I'm going to talk through and just discuss and give examples, and hope that if you've got any questions, you might pop them into the chat. So Nabil will be my partner in crime today, looking into the chat and looking into if there's something that we need to address right now, or if we're going to take the question later. We're trying to leave about 15 minutes for questions by the end. So hope you enjoy this, and let's make it also interactive. So I might ask you a couple of questions here as well. Let's move. So a couple of words about where I come from. Agile HR Community is the name of the company. And we are practically delivering agile transformation, change, training, coaching. We do also meetups. So we're trying to build this capability. We started with HR, but very quickly realized that we're quite good at describing this to non-tech people, non-IT people, what this really means. So privately, or myself, I'm working quite a lot with transformations on the business side, with procurement, legal, sales, with product, with hardware, and trying specifically with executives, trying to explain what this means for them in their own language. So we started with HR and we love working there, and that's our core. We have trained over 1,500 HR professionals, and we are certifying them not against being present, not against a test where they tick the boxes, but we actually have certifications where they need to send in case studies in how they would apply what they are learning into their own world, and we're assessing them accordingly. Do you know what you're speaking about? Would you be able to apply this? So that's where I connect with agnostic agile principles, is that I really think that if you say that you're certified anything, if you're a certified electrician, you should be knowing how to draw electric wires in a house. If you're a certified agile HR professional, you would be able to lead agility in HR. You would be able to help with agile transformations. You would know by heart what agility means. So that's what we're doing. We're also training product owners and scrum masters, etc., in the non-tech space. So if we look at the elements of agile work, you all know these things who are agilists, but we kind of boil them down into understandable elements like this when we speak with non-IT and non-tech people. First of all, customer centricity. If we think about this in a HR setting, think about that HR is practically creating and sitting on and owning all of the people products in your organization. If you think about the people career life cycle, how they get into the organization, they're first approached by employer branding, what the company is all about. Then they go through a recruitment process. Thereafter, they have the hiring practice, getting all that data in, getting the onboarding started, and they go through onboarding, setting goals, meeting the team, discussing with the manager, setting development actions, starting to develop. They are, learning and development, learning the corporation customer things and using the tools and all of that practice. Then they come to a situation where they have a job change. So they change from one place to another. They might have go through absences, or they might have health issues or something like that. All of these touch points to the career is what HR practically owns, okay? So that is where we come to the customer centricity and value to the customer. How many of you could put up your hand and say, I had an amazing onboarding process, an amazing onboarding experience. What a great product that the HR has created. Very few. Very few of you see that the HR teams are creating amazing products for the people. If you would need to pay for the products that HR teams are creating, very few of you would, because they're not that customer centric. They're not yet user centric. They're not that intuitive. So this is what we try to teach, is bring in the agile values into the people products that you're creating, and you're going to generate much better people experience for the people that you serve, for managers, for employees, for top leaders, for candidates. When we then start working with our product, I call it product development in HR, maybe it's an onboarding practice, or maybe it's a management development program, or maybe it's just healthcare policy, whatever the product is, we start doing that with the agile principles, the values, and the mindset. Very rarely we can take any model and say, take Scrum and start using that in HR. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So what we are trying to bring into HR is that, okay, let's look at this incrementally. How could we, let's take the onboarding as an example. If we need to develop an onboarding practice, say hybrid onboarding in an organization that has many different locations and people are both remote and on site, that's a complex service and a complex product. Okay, so we start developing that. Why don't we start thinking about slicing that into some kind of increments? We don't need to develop everything at once. Maybe we'll just deliver the first day experience, so that's great for everybody, or the first week experience. Or maybe we'll look at mandatory compliance trainings that people need to have when they come into this organization, and make them fun, engaging, and interactive, because they're boring and silly and everybody just does it because they have to. Maybe we'll have these kind of different slices that we look at in the product and deliver that incrementally. Then we of course use the same types of approach with the ways of working. We bring in release planning. We do adaptive planning with product backlog. We call kind of, what product backlog is, backlog management. We work with our stakeholders, and then we start delivering through working with Kanban or Scrum or something in between. Doesn't matter, as long as we start doing that incrementally, together, adaptively, with feedback feedback driving our next iterations and next decisions. So practically, we are building services for people in an incremental way with the agile values and practices. We also bring in the transparency, which is very new to HR people. They are very used to working in silos, very used to working with their own domain expertise, delivering from their own domain to a project manager or to somewhere a little part of something. They're not used to working in cross-functional teams, delivering, for example, the onboarding experience end to end. So this transparency brings a lot of benefits for HR. And also, I would say some HR teams are quite scared of that, because they feel that everybody can see what they're doing and everything's transparent. And you know what, we have so many secrets in HR, but I kind of challenge them to say, how secret can an onboarding development be, really? It's not that, top secret. We use continuous improvement, so the same as any other team, retrospectives. We are testing and learning and demoing. So an example of an onboarding could be, instead of just launching a process and a tool and everything, we might have 3 different alternatives. We have designed different alternatives for having the first day. And maybe we test that out. We test the first day out, version A, version B, and version C with 10 people, and see how that works. Get the feedback in, and based on that feedback, we then iterate the model or the service or the product, and then we can start scaling that across when we know what really works. So the same ideas as you have with any product development, we bring in to HR. This sustainable velocity is a big thing. HR people have always too many things running at the same time. And this is one major change compared to the software teams. The software teams usually are dedicated to one product. The software teams are, or should be, dedicated to one product, or at least a couple of products, or dedicated to one backlog where they pull from. HR people have their business as usual. They're participating in several projects because they can't not do that. They've got operational stuff. They got managers that need something from them all the time. They got employees asking questions. So they really do have many areas and layers on top of each other. So how can we bring in sustainable velocity and really understand our capacity is something that we help them with. Self-organizing teams. Self-organization tends to work quite well in HR. You know why? Because they are quite good communicators. They're really good. They're human-centric. They're listening to each other. They're quite extroverted to say what they think. They are attentive and respectful in how they work. So Agile ways of working really usually hits home when they learn the logic and the structure and the kind of values underneath. So these are the elements of Agile work that we tend to teach. And when I speak about Agile in HR, I speak about two different sides of it. What I've spoken so far about is the left-hand side, the Agile for HR. That means that how can we in HR ourselves use the Agile ways of working, the principles and values to develop people products? So how can we use that in our HR teams? The other side of the coin is, okay, let's imagine that we're a HR team and our organization starts changing. So maybe you work with transformations on the software side or product side. Our whole software department is going to go into a more agile ways of working, whatever model it may be, or not a model, whatever. But they're going to start working this way. How do we now support the change and develop such processes, policies, and support that supports the agile operating model and not the traditional hierarchical model that we have so far built all our products on? If you look at the right-hand side, the HR for Agile side, think about all the HR products, all the way from the life cycle of a career or a employment. Most of those touch points are built on the notion that we have a line manager doing something, a line manager writing, approving something, or hiring or firing or making a job change or something. If we now think about the right-hand side, we start having flatter organizations. We have product owners and scrum masters, not a direct line manager there to take care of everything. What does our people processes look like? So this is the right-hand side, is how can we develop policies, processes, and practices on the people side that fit the agile operating model? And that's a trickier question than you might believe, because I'm giving you an example. One of the trickiest things when you start a business agile transformation, let's do this. What is the biggest blocker, do you think, to really go into a agile model on the business side or a business unit? Let's just do a chat. Can you chat that? What has been your biggest blocker and biggest trouble with really succeeding with that? Could you share some blockers in the chat, please? Culture change, leadership buying it, measurement and rewarding system. Stephen is mentioning that. Leadership and culture shift, lack of structure in place, poor understanding what it's really about. Resistance. So one of the things is very behavioral. It is around leaders understanding what this is all about, cultural shift, and who's owning usually the culture development usually sits with people operations or HR. The other thing which I'm thinking about is performance management. So rewarding systems. No matter what you want to do on the agile side, if you want people to start working in teams together with an iterative approach where they can pivot if needed, common goals, sharing goals, customer centricity, but they still have an individual goal setting that happens every January, and that is tied to a 5,000 euro, 10,000 euro bonus. they're going to go for that bonus instead of maybe pivoting where needed. So the performance management, who sits with that? HR. HR is owning the performance management. And you know how long it takes to change the performance management in larger companies? At least a year. Because it goes all the way up to a remuneration committee, which is close to the board. So there are board members sitting on a remuneration committee, and they are agreeing on the performance and rewarding systems of the company. So this is what I'm talking about. HR needs to sit on these transformations early, because we're owning processes and policies that are literally blocking you from succeeding in agile change. Literally blocking you if they're not tweaked, at least to allow agility. Performance is one. Leadership behaviors is another one. How we choose leaders, that's totally different from a normal hierarchical organization where, as a leader, you have been good at making decisions, analyzing things, looking good upwards, creating great slides and trying to sell things. And now you need to lead in a totally different way in the agile operating model. So this is the background to why you should be hopefully inviting your HR leaders early into the transformation, and also upskilling them into what this agility really means. This is hopefully something that you won't be offended by. Please do not be offended. I'm not saying this because I don't think you're amazing agilists and professionals. This is based on the 14 years of experience where tech agilists, IT agilists have trained HR people and tried to support HR people moving this way. They have not had a high success rate. Why? Because tech agilists do not understand the infrastructure HR is dealing with. And I'm going to get to that soon. They don't understand the product services in HR and what the dependencies are underneath. So with all of the products that we're maintaining and developing, there are dependencies in between them. Onboarding is dependent of learning. Learning is dependent of talent. Talent is dependent on performance and learning and onboarding. So there are complex interdependencies between what we are doing. So that's why tech agilists tend to be simplifying the agile approach quite a lot in HR, which leads to big trouble down the line. The other one is that when we bring in tech agilists, they are not able to modify it to context. So in HR, we got specialists, generalists, business as usual, development work, non-dedicated teams, PO, sometimes in one project, they're PO, in another, they're a team member. So we need to be very contextual, and as agnostic agile also say, use from agility whatever makes sense to enable teams to deliver customer-centric value incrementally with the feedback loops that they need to. For example, here, I'm just going to show, actually, I'm going to see if we're going to skip this to make time for what I'm going to do next is I'm going to talk you through what types of products and services HR teams are owning, developing, and delivering to the organization. So this is usually quite breathtaking. It's very surprising for people who haven't been working in HR, and even for HR people that, wow, are we doing all of this? And maybe understanding the product layers that we have will also help you understand how we should be connecting to whatever you're doing and how that connects to that. So first, let's start with the absolute hygiene factor layer. Needs to happen in any type of an organization, big or small, local, regional, international. These things need to be there. So if we're looking at this, it is around, what usually happens is that when you hire your first HR leader, they come in and all of this is a mess. You thought that they would come in and do something very strategic, but they recognize, oh, we don't even have unified contracts. Everybody has been doing something with the contracts, so we don't have unified contracts. We need to start there. So if you look at this, contracts, payroll, insurance. These are basic stuff. Having an absence policy so people know what to do when they're sick or absent. Agreeing on occupational safety, which is often in the laws of a country. Knowing how to handle pensions, collective agreements and unions, or working. I'm not sure if anybody has been working with German people. They've got works councils that have more power than Donald Trump had when he was a dictator or president. So there are like really fundamental things that need to be there in the place. Compensation, benefits, bonuses, all of these things need to be clear and understandable, and policies need to be there, not just for HR, but for managers as well. Travel policy, car policy, you can see here, this is just the hygiene factors, okay? Really the hygiene factors that need to be there. And you know what? What's surprising is that if you have people that are working in 2 countries, these are different for the countries. So all of these 3 countries, you need to look at 3 different unions, 3 or even more if you've got different types of employment groups. You have work policies in all countries that are legally compliant, need to be legally compliant with the country. So yeah, it is quite a lot of work already but this isn't bringing a value as such. It's just needs to exist, just operational. The next part is starting to build on kind of how we're working, what kind of structures we have in place to steer, to have decision-making, leadership, managers. We need to start having some kind of management layers, because we can't just have everybody or very few organizations, when they grow beyond 50 people, can have a full flat organization. It just doesn't exist. So we need some kind of layers. Org design. What type of teams do we have? How do we design the organization? What are the dependencies in the organization? How do we build collaboration platforms? That might be sitting in IT as well, but we need to be sitting there as well to make sure that we've got the culture element there, that we've got the DE&I, be diversity inclusion. We might need to start thinking about what to do with non-performers. So that's another part that might be important, because if we move towards, for example, if we move towards agile organizations, what does this mean? In a traditional organization, we have a manager who's responsible of the performance of their team, but now we might not have that direct manager there. So job changes, that's an interesting thing, by the way. People think that, oh, why is it so difficult? Why does it take so long time with job change? Well, you do a job change and almost every other layer underneath here is going to change. They're going to have a new contract. There might be new policies with the new position. They might need the non-comp. They have other regulatory things that are affecting their position. They might have new compensation and benefit programs or packages, etc. So a job change affects a lot of these other things as well. Then that's not enough. When we start really bringing a bit of more value to the organization and the strategy, we start working with, for example, feedback. So feedback structures, how we upskill people with feedback. We start having quick rewards needs, so building some kind of rewarding principles. I personally don't like to overdo rewarding and start kind of having waving a carrot in front of people. But that happens in organizations. We need some kind of project rewards or go out to dinner with, acknowledgement rewards, whatever. Then we need to start understanding what the leadership behaviors are that we want to build. All of these are long-term things that we build, leadership behaviors. Successor planning, that is something that sits with HR as well. Who could take a position if this person would win the lottery and just leave, or just leave to another organization? We start university collaboration, or somehow trying to get a pipeline of talent in as well, depending on what the talent market looks like. That's what we're looking at. We run employee surveys. we start more and more looking into contingent workforce, which means that people who are not employed by our organization are contractors or vendors or whatever type of other people that we can work with, and they have their own infrastructure with contracts and with all of these things. So there's that as well. Of course, all the usual onboarding, rewarding, well-being, training, development discussions, those are quite usual that we work with as well. Then, are you out of breath already? This is what we then start looking into: leadership development, long-term leadership development. What types of behaviors, capabilities, skills are we building for leaders? What do we need when we hire leaders? What do we need to assess people for if they want to become leaders? So all of that is an infrastructure by itself. Leadership forums, if we get together to share something, to learn something, quite often HR is connected to that as well. Learning platforms, peer feedback, candidate pools. How do we handle the candidates that are applying to us? Because quite often we have very good candidates who are getting a no thank you, and we would like to continue have been in touch with them. So the next time there's a position opening, we might reach out directly. And then when you start looking at all of this, we start having partners that take care of some of the work. Maybe something is outsourced, such as compensation, payroll, pension, etc. We start having senior executives on board. They have different types of contracts and rewarding in place, which we need to understand. We might be in an organization that is doing mergers and acquisitions, and every acquisition, specifically if there is a merger, we need to start merging all of these. So there's 2 different policies of the same thing, or 3 different ways of onboarding people, and we need to start harmonizing things or merging things. Massive amount of work there. That's why mergers are also a bit difficult on the people side, is that we've got so many things that we need to prioritize what to do properly. Usually that's the compliance and legal things, and then other things are kind of not done that well quite often in mergers. International projects. We've got certain companies that are sending people to the same site to work on a project. Now, that's unfair. If people come from different parts and you, Nabil, have 3 weeks of holidays during half a year, and another person have 1 week of holiday, and you're working with the exact same project. So we start having international project policies in place to make it fair, transparent, and working well. Expat process, one of the so that's when we when send people with a very, very nice contract somewhere abroad to work. DE&I is a big word: diversity, equality, and inclusion, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Very big word right now. So working quite a lot with making sure that our environment, our structures, our systems are reduce bias there, and trying to bring in as much diversity as possible, and make sure that we are compliant and kind of working according to good values with that. Then we come to the big picture, such as headcount and workforce planning. Who's going to work for this company during the next 2 years, 1 year or 2 years? We need to have an idea on. We could talk about headcount or FTEs, how many FTEs where. So that's a big thing that we do in HR as well. And of course, financials connected to this. So you can start seeing what we're doing in HR. It's not just payroll and hiring. It's quite a lot of other stuff as well. And all of these, I start seeing these as products. How can we develop products that are serving the organization in the context where the organization is right now, or in the maturity level where the organization is right now? You might not need all of this in a smaller organization. You might not even need all of this in a big organization, but this is what sits with HR. If we start, all of this needs to sit in a system. So in addition to just kind of maintaining and developing these things, we need, of course, digitalization of it. So which system are we using? And we tend to have, in larger organizations, there might be like a handful, 5 to 10 systems that take care of all of this. So, if you've been working with IT systems, integration, privacy things, GDPR, access rights to people matters and people data. Very, very complex there. So we need to be able to, or for example, we should be hindering people to take out Excel reports of the systems, because these Excel reports suddenly become a people data ledger or registry. And that is a different law with that then again. So all that digitalization that is connected to that. Then we, of course, hold on, why is this not adding? Now the big words that you mentioned, change and transformation, culture, talent, employee experience. These are big words. I think these are kind of big work streams where we pick up our products and deliver with these red products. We are delivering whatever sits here. But these are big words that HR people are working with as well. On top of this, we, of course, are delivering services. So employees, managers, candidates need to understand what needs to be done or how they can behave. So, and all of this might be global, local, or regional. So you can start seeing the complexity here. We also, of course, digitalize, talk about harmonization, because we simply can't have different types of learning policies in 15 different countries and try to manage that. So we try to harmonize things where we can. Sometimes we centralize things, sometimes we localize things, and that is a kind of pendulum swinging. I've been in this now for 20 years, a bit over, and there's always a trend towards either side, localization, getting more freedom for the local countries to choose, or then centralization when we want to harmonize and get kind of things under control again. AI is massive right now. So LLM models and generative AI is coming into this space really quickly, and you might imagine what kind of conversations that bring, because can we give access to AI solutions to all of these things? No, absolutely not. What is ethical? What is kind of feasible? Very important. Can we have AI assisted decision making with people's careers? Can we have AI assisted decision making with who should be going through a hiring pipeline? Absolutely not if it's a black box, because we might be legally reliable on sitting there and making decisions on motivating why we have chosen a certain person. And if it's a black box and AI has made that recommendation, that won't hold in court. So there's a lot of discussions around that as well. And ethics is a big word with all of this. Why am I speaking of all of this? Why is it a bit boring? What is HR doing? Well, you can start pinpointing what connects to agile transformations from here quite quickly. So you can start seeing, I tried to put stars on whatever is connecting to the agile transformations. And you can start seeing that there is a lot of parts that connect to the agile transformation, where we need to start collaborating. For example, let's just pick up something. Successor planning. What does that look like in an agile organization? You've got a chief PO, product owner. Has anybody thought about what if this product owner is leaving? Who can take their place? Who can learn about, who can be onboarded to the product quickly, who can have those skills? What does it mean with choosing who's going to be a leader in this organization? What type of leadership behaviors we have? And if we've got two different types of organization, the agile part of the organization and the traditional hierarchical part of the organization, we might need to uphold and maintain two different types of, for example, performance management. The agile performance management doesn't work for the hierarchical one, and the hierarchical performance management surely doesn't work for the agile operating model. So I'm aware of time. I'm going to stop here and stop sharing, and would love to hear some comments from questions from the group. I would just love to hear kind of immediate reactions first. If there's anybody who wants to share an immediate reaction from what you just heard, I'd be curious to hear. Anyone? Alistair, please.
First of all, thank you, Riina. That's really, really interesting. I come from a finance background and into Agile, very similar to your journey in terms of just suddenly going like, oh my goodness, there's a name for this thing that I have going on in my head right now. So it's really exciting to see what you've been doing with this. And I think most of the things that you said about HR seem to apply to what I'm trying to do now with finance as well.
Very much, very
and
much.
Of course, HR and finance need to very much connect, especially around, because obviously ultimately it comes down to sort of, where does the money go?
Yeah.
But anyway, my first impression is wow, thank you for pulling all that together, to allowing us to see just what the concepts are and what we're trying to deal with. But at the same, and so something really, really complex. It'd be fascinating to then see how you go about delivering a transformation, or how you go around helping organizations to unpick all of that and deliver their agility. But that's
you.
my initial sort of thought is how do you do that?
Excellent. And I just want to kind of build on what you said. I really do like that you start doing this in finance. Please do a lot of work, because there's a lot of work there on the finance side. I think that the most difficult people to actually get on board with understanding and approaching things in an agile way are legal, compliance, and finance. HR is not that difficult, because when they see the light, they actually recognize that, oh, wow, this is a better way of doing people products, because we're delivering people products. You're delivering number processes, right? So there's a bit difference there. So amazing. How we do this, I think one of the key things what is leading to our success is that we trust that people are smart, and when we train them with the logic, they know what to do with that, right? We just make sure that we train and support them with the logic in a very high quality fashion, and then challenge them to think themselves. How would you use this when you develop a management development program? Well, maybe you don't go away to your bunker and sit there for half a year and believe that you know what the right answer is. Maybe you'll have a co-creation session with 10 managers and ask them what they need, and build on top of what the real needs are right now in the organization. Or maybe you build it in a just-in-time manner, so that you have a manager that needs to do recruitment, and this manager hasn't done that ever. Maybe when they ignite the recruitment or create the recruitment request, there's an immediate response to them. Hey, you're doing a recruitment. If you want to learn, here's how you can learn what recruitment is and how you do interviews, and this is important. So maybe you have a just-in-time management development strategy, instead of that one-size-fits-all massive big bang delivery that you created in half a year. So I think when they learn to think about their products and services in a different way, it actually makes more sense to them as well. And that's been our success factor, is to trust the people, train them well, trust them, and support them then to make decisions contextually. Anyone that wants to share their own reflection? Nabil, when you heard this the second time, what was something that you picked up on now?
So when you were talking about the different HR products, I was listing down the ones that I thought were their strong crossover with what Agilists promote. So I'm really glad to see the crescendo for that slide was pointing out that, over half of it has significant overlap to what we do. And for me, that just makes it really obvious to build the case that, collaboration is more important than ever. I mean, there's no point of us duplicating effort or even going in different directions when it comes to things like leadership training or target setting, because that will just, that's just a recipe for disaster. So I think that was a great visualization that, for me, made it clearer than ever that, we can only benefit from joining up and collaborating to develop these common interests.
Oh, so important. And I've also heard areas where HR people think, what are those agile coaches doing? They are doing something which isn't connected to our big people strategy at all, right? So the left hand is doing something which isn't aligned with the right hand. Or then the other way around, when I was an interim CHRO for 5 months in a digital company, there was an agile coach coming in and saying to me, you know what, we have been self-organizing and with the principles of agile, we now have concluded that we're not going to document work time for our teams, because that's just irrelevant, non-value adding documentation or bureaucracy. And I said, what a lovely idea. But do you know what that's going to lead to? It's going to lead to us being in court very, very soon and closing down business. Okay. So it's a constraint that you don't understand that we have from the legal perspective that we can't overstep. So there are a lot of agile coaches that are kind of overly naive about employment law, about what sits there, and kind of want to take the shortcuts that are not possible. So really having those conversations and understanding what is relevant, what is possible, what the employment law says, that needs maturity there. So sometimes we've got these, if you may, these kind of very idealistic agile coaches who wants to sit there and sing Kumbaya and levitate. And that is, you know, far from the reality what we deal with in HR. Yeah, so we would love to work with agile coaches to develop the leaders, to develop the culture, to make sure that communication works, to get feedback in for the organization. You're our best allies, but please understand that the structures that we're working with, there are some constraints that we need to be policing some of these things, and that's pretty boring actually to be a naysayer. Yeah.
And this is kind of what I alluded to when the reason why I was so happy with this is because so much of Agile focuses on tech. And I think when you're going to work with HR or other functions, it has to start from a place of humility, because as you pointed out, there's so much to HR that I doubt very few people in tech and Agile coaches will actually be privy to. So starting from a point of humility, maybe can get things off to the right foot, which is why I'm not that surprised where you said you haven't seen much success from tech agilists working with HR. They might try to bring the framework across, but obviously, you can't just slap a framework on a different function that has, totally different contexts.
Can I build on that? Because I'm working with a major client right now where they did a HR agile transformation 4 years ago, and this big consultancy came in and tech agilist came in and said, oh, you all need to move into Scrum. And they had 50 people move into Scrum and not even have portfolio management in place. So suddenly they were like, what? 15 Scrum teams out of 50 people who worked with 30 different products. And it was a total, absolute mess. They also had business as usual, operational, ongoing. They also had the digital kind of system approach there. So just a mess and nonsense. And they really needed to reset Agile and start from the beginning, because of this. So yeah. So absolutely. There's a question. I think Michael has a comment or a question. Lovely.
Michael does. And I know Stephen had his hand up a while ago. So Michael, do you want to quickly go first and then Stephen?
Stephen. Go to Stephen.
Okay. Riina, it was a pleasure to watch you put in those slides up. I was screen saving all of them. All right. So, and I've read half of your book, and this is years overdue. I've been transforming organizations from an agile perspective across the business. And the two groups of people I leave till the very last, because it was very difficult, would be HR and finance. Okay. So the major change was happening within the operation, the different role design. And then the people then went back to HR and then said, this is what you should be measuring us on to get the best out of us. So that was the flow that way. But there was a whole education for the normal delivery, the line managers and the other. They had to learn first how they needed to connect to their customers. So then once they knew that, they were in a position to educate the finance guy. He says, look, you want to control costs? We'll tell you where the costs are. And if you measure these costs, your costs go up. And if you really want high performance, measuring on these will also put up your costs. So, but it was an education of the delivery arm coming back.
And a delay, that's a cost of delay it's a big cost of delay for the organization, because it's been I'm not sure, do you say put sticks in the wheel, the carriage?
Mhm.
You know, so there's a lot of trouble and obstacles that both finance and HR are creating for your transformations. I tend to say HR should walk about half a year before the transformation, because they need to mold the ground and the processes and the policies so that they are ready whenever the transformation hits, right? So yeah.
There's one thing I will say, which I really liked, and it comes down to you talking about the leadership forums, and this is all about Agile is about distributed leadership and devolved decision making. And what you said is when you teach the people this purpose, I don't know exactly what it was, but it's once you show them the principles and let them do it, but create some safety bars around that. That's great, because what you're doing is you're shifting the nature of the decision making and the power to do that, and you get more autonomy. And to be honest with you, I think that is the biggest secret of Agile.
Yeah, and you know what I tend to say to them? I don't care if you're Agile or not. I care that you deliver value. Stand on your head and sing Kumbaya if you want to. If that delivers value, go ahead and do that. I don't care. So agility means about delivering value at speed. That's what it is about. And if you choose whatever method for doing that, but agility might be helpful, what we call agile as in principles and values. Michael, can we go? Thank you very much, Stephen, for sharing your thoughts and your reflections. I really appreciate that. And I hope that the next time you're working with a big transformation, you know who to contact for HR and who to contact for finance as well. Michael, your turn.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to put a face behind the questions, but before that, I know I'm repeating something someone else has said, but really thank you, because you gave us the overall view. We might have seen some glimpse here and there. We are great intuitive people and we pride ourselves of that, but we need someone to show us the way. And as Nabil said, sometimes we need that humility, and let me also add the curiosity, because I think it's great opportunity for us to step in the HR department and consider these people our colleagues. I've done that since I was very young, and I've been always pointed as the weird one. So it's great that now is taking place. So the questions were, the first one is the cultural battle of removing a word that I'm really happy that has never been coming out from your mouth. That's a great gift for me, which is a terrible word for resource, right? People are not resources, right? So if we want them to feel respected and valuable individuals, the first step is to teach our leaders to ban the word. Because as long as you think of someone as a resource, then it's disposable, replaceable, not valuable, and blah, blah, blah. So the first question is, how are you dealing with this battle when you do this kind of work in your environments? And the second one, very practical, regardless of Scrum or whatever framework, you rightfully said product people, right? So every process is a product, and I absolutely agree, so that we can measure value and so on. How do we appoint the product owners or whatever function that we can have an individual that can own end-to-end a process or whatever, also because it needs to be measured in terms of performance and value. Thank you.
Excellent questions. First of all, the HR word, I don't even think about HR anymore as human resources, just HR, two letters, really. I've unfortunately been in situations where we had to lay off a lot of people and they called us human remains as well. So it's horrible. But human relations would be nice. Why we use HR ourselves in our brand is that because the scene is still there. They call themselves HR, right? I would rather call it people operations or people in culture. And quite many of the HR people don't even think about, they talk about people, not resources. That's a cultural thing. I think the resource talk, I usually always comment on that as well. I hate it. I absolutely hate that. We need to do our best to cut that type of language. It's not helpful. but the other question that you had, could you repeat that, please?
Sure. It was about how do you choose, train, and appoint the equivalent
The
of product
product
owners
owners.
for all those very important steps end to end, so they can own it, and you can so measure success and improve.
So the trouble with HR has been traditionally that there are process owners, and there is a single point contact owning a process, and they do all the decisions regarding that. I would actually like to move away from that. I wouldn't like to appoint product owners for each and every one of those things. I'd like to build a portfolio saying, here is a portfolio of administrative people practices, right? And there's a team owning those administrative people practices. And when you own that product portfolio, you're responsible of allocating your time and effort to either developing them, maintaining them, serving services in them, etc. So you need to sort out that portfolio works, and you need to also be able to kill your products or kill your darlings if something is not needed. I mean, if you're looking at employee surveys, who of you likes to answer 150 questions once a year? You get the results 4 months late, the organization has changed, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to happen, total waste of time, right? So you need to be able to when to kill products as well. And this is on a strategic level. I would like to see families of products instead of single product owners. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Don't go for product.
Excellent. I think we're in time, Nabil. So not wanting to run over because we're agile here, understanding time boxes.
Yeah, we should normally great at time boxing, slightly over today. Guys and gals, please join me in my awkward round of applause for Riina. It's a lot better in person. Still haven't quite mastered how to do it virtually, but there you go. Riina, that was really inspiring. I can tell a lot of the audience took a lot of inspiration from it. I know I did. Final question. If we wanted to learn how to pick up the learning journey, so us Agilists work closer with HR, any quick recommendations on how we can do that? You're muted, by the way.
Can you say recommendations on what? Sorry.
How we as Agilists could continue our learning journey to understand HR better and work closer with HR.
So if you want to learn HR, I would say go and sit with them and ask them what's on their table. Because, you know, the whole infrastructure that I just shared, you're not going to want to dive deep into works councils, or, you know, that's not what you want to do. You want to know what they're right now working with and how that connects to what you're doing, and start jumping in on you know, bringing them in, inviting them in to collaborate with them. You probably would like to work more on the leadership, change, culture, successor planning, talent, career side, because that's where we need to collaborate more, less on the administrative, bureaucratic policy side. So I'd probably say go and learn about those things. There are tons of material out there. If you want to learn how Agile connects to HR, then the book is quite good, Agile HR. I would recommend that, of course. But yeah, learning from the people, because HR is a field that is so broad and has so much material. So you can pretty much choose an area there that is interesting for you, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. Yeah, have a conversation. Who would have guessed? Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Riina. We hope to have you back someday. And audience, thank you so much for dialing in. Appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to join us. Have a great evening, everyone, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.